You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Well, good morning. Want to do just a little more of a headline, I guess, in the last few days when I read this one yesterday. And not that it surprised me, but it's pretty incredible when you think about it. And if you can see the headline, it says Blue Cross just came out with, and I'll read it to you. Blue Cross says that Alzheimer's has tripled in the last 4 years. The amount of Alzheimer's. Now, when we talk about Alzheimer's, this is almost like a new phenomenon. Not that there was never Alzheimer's or there was never dementia before, but today it's in an epidemic proportions. And it's not getting any better, it's getting worse. Now, we've talked about this a lot. They're looking for vaccines for Alzheimer's. They're looking at drugs for Alzheimer's. And everything that they've tested thus far has not worked. Hasn't worked at all. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the biggest fear for people my age or even younger than me is Alzheimer's. It's a scary thought for Alzheimer's because, guys, you don't ever want to outlive your brain. And this is the problem, that people are outliving their brain. And it's in the last, Blue Cross says that in the last 4 years, the number of cases of Alzheimer's has tripled. Of course, this puts an enormous stress on, we all know what just think of the ramifications of that. The enormous stress of Alzheimer's. I mean, if you have Alzheimer's, it doesn't put necessarily a lot of stress because you don't even know you've got it. But for the family, for society, think of the implications of this dreaded disease. And for years, and even today, medicine looks at Alzheimer's as it's a brain circulation thing, okay? And they look at the amyloid plaque. And it seems to be consistent that, people that have Alzheimer's or dementia, early dementia, they have restricted blood flow to the brain. They have amyloid plaques, which is, a protein in the brain that sort of scars up the neurotransmitters in the brain. And this is what they see consistently upon, MRIs and things like that. But guys, that, going after that isn't going to fix Alzheimer's because, again, you have to reverse engineer even more. You have to go back and reverse engineer because what's causing amyloid plaque? What's causing the problem with microcirculation? So I always bring it back to, for example, whenever somebody tells me they have glaucoma or problems with the eye, I always say, well, look, it's circulation. It's circulation in behind the eye. Because if you look into the eyeball, you go in with, with an instrument and you look in behind the eye, you see highways behind the eye. It's incredible. You see the 407, the 403, and all those highways, and they're all little capillaries, little microcirculation. But guys, that's the same thing that happens in your brain. So when the eye or even your kidneys is all about circulation. But what causes the circulation to be damaged? Well, think about this, and this is why I want to tie these together. If you're a diabetic, what happens in diabetes? What is the worst thing in diabetes? Circulation, right? That's why kidneys Kidneys break down. That's why you lose limbs. This is why diabetic patients have glaucoma. They have diabetic retinopathy. They have blindness. But as I was saying in an earlier podcast, that if you are a diabetic, you are 3 times more likely to get Alzheimer's. So as we reverse engineer this Alzheimer's, go back, yes, to circulation, but go back even farther, inflammation. Inflammation damages the microcirculation, not only of the brain, of the eyes and this, but they're all connected because one of the main things is inflammation. But again, as Tony Jr. says, inflammation is not Houdini. Inflammation is very damaging. If you kick me in the knee, of course I'm going to have inflammation. But it's part of the body's ambulance system. It's bringing more blood supply. It's bringing more protein. It's bringing enzymes, all to do healing. But if they don't go away, they damage. Chronic inflammation. But you got to go another step back. Taking one more step back. What is the major cause of inflammation that damages circulation in the brain, in the eyes, in the kidneys? What causes that? High circulating insulin. And we've talked about this so often. It's food. It's sugars and crappy carbohydrates. It elevates your insulin, which creates an inflammatory response. And we talk specifically about the brain and how, when Blue Cross is telling us something, that the rates of Alzheimer's, which, by the way, let's just put it into its context, because it drives me crazy when I see the stuff in the news today and everybody's worried about the coronavirus. There's a huge conference. I used to speak at this conference in the United States. It's called the Expo West Natural Health Conference in Anaheim, California. It's the biggest conference, one of the biggest conferences in the world. 90,000 people show up to this conference, 90,000. And they canceled it at the last second yesterday. I read it. Why? Because of the coronavirus. Everybody's worried about the coronavirus, but I'm not worried about the coronavirus. I'm more worried about sugar. I'm more worried about what that does to your brain. The long damage. And this is why Blue Cross, if they were smart, because they're going to have, look, Blue Cross has to pay out claims. They're an insurance company. Blue Cross pays health for disease care. They should be into prevention, but they're not there yet. Medicine isn't into prevention yet. It's crazy. They're not. They're not even looking at food. They're looking at drugs. It's looking for love in all the wrong places. The answer is in food. Now, I could talk to you about a second ramification. There's 3 ramifications. We talk about the 3 seeds of disease, but I won't go into detail this morning. But the number one thing is high circulating insulin. Then there's leaky gut, leaky brain. We could talk about that, but I'm not going to do it on this particular little teaching. I want to focus in on sugars. And just to finish, just to put this into perspective, because the headline is, in the last 4 years, the amount of Alzheimer's has tripled in the United States alone. It's the number 1 killer in the United Kingdom. Alzheimer's is number 3 in Canada and the United States in terms of, it's only behind heart disease and cancer, and third is Alzheimer's. It's almost like unbelievable. But the clear and present danger is sugar. Because, and again, let me just tell you what happens in the brain. I know the circulation, but let me just bring it again. I've talked to you about this many a times. I'm going to do it again. When you're constantly eating carbohydrates and sugars, okay? Sugars are carbs, but these are added sugars, okay, when I talk about that. And read your labels. It's incredible. The food industry, liar, pants on fire. Oh, fat makes you fat, and fat's not good for your brain. Don't eat fat, but don't eat bacon and eggs and cheese, but eat our cereals, and eat our cookies, and eat our crackers, and eat our, all garbage food. What they've done is they've elevated insulin. And insulin is a hormone that if you have insulin resistance, your brain, it's a different puppy altogether, because your brain is headquarters. It will take the fuel that you give it. It is a fuel eater. 20% of the food that you eat goes directly to your brain as fuel. Your brain loves fuel. So if you eat sugar, it goes immediately to your brain. Your brain says, okay, you're giving me a fuel. I don't care what kind of fuel, give it to me. The problem is insulin's job, you guys know this, insulin's job is to take sugar out of the bloodstream, because sugar in the bloodstream is very toxic, even in the brain, in the bloodstream. But insulin, okay, come here, sugar, come here. You can't stay there. Get out. You got to come out of the brain. But the problem is, if you have insulin resistance, the blood-brain barrier will not allow insulin to go into the brain to take the sugar out. So what happens? The sugar saturates the brain, especially the hippocampus. Campus is the word. Think of campus, the memory center of your brain. It's the part of the brain that gets damaged the most by sugar. Hippocampus. Because insulin can't get in. It can't take the sugar out. So what does that do? It destroys your blood vessels, the microcirculation inside your brain. It creates amyloid plaque. So guys, this is why I talk to you about this all the time. All the time. I know I'm into our little group this morning, into the Martin Clinic teaching here. But guys, I know I'm repeat, but this is when I see headlines like this, that is the clear and present danger in our society. This is a much bigger problem, guys, than anything that you can think of, because we're going to go broke. We're going to go broke just trying to treat Alzheimer's. And it's incredible what's happening. But you guys know enough that you want to do prevention. Okay, there's your little teaching for this morning. We'll talk to you soon.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.